Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Islam Study Circle. We'll start off this circle and this study session by studying our first segment, which relates to the Quran. Today, the verses that we are going to study are, in fact, a complete surah. These are three verses of Surah Asr, and they, in fact, reflect the permanent requirements of faith. Most of us would be knowing this surah by heart. So it goes like, Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa allazina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Time bears witness that these people shall definitely be in a state of loss, except those who accepted faith, did righteous deeds, urged one another to the truth, and urged one another to remain steadfast on the truth. Now, this is a surah in which you'll see that it starts off with an oath, and in the Quran, these oaths are not meant generally to emphasize a statement as is generally understood. They are basically meant to signify evidence, to signify bearing witness, to signify bearing testimony. So, Wal Asr is normally translated as time. The oath is regarded to be something which emphasizes time, or it is translated as by time. Whereas the correct translation would be that time bears witness. And which time exactly is this? This is the time of prophethood, the prophetic era, from Adam to Muhammad. We know from Adam to Muhammad there was a special law of the Almighty, and that was that He sent certain prophets as messengers, and these messengers, they delivered the truth to their addressees in its ultimate form. And once this was done and they did not accept the truth stubbornly, deliberately, then they were punished in this world, either through natural disasters or through the swords of the disbelievers. So this is a very, very specific feature of the prophetic era. And this prophetic era, as I just said, that various messengers they come, they create a small or a miniature day of judgment on the face of the earth. They are like instruments of God's justice on the face of the earth. They come down with the directives of God. They are sent with miracles as well. And the purpose is to let their addressees know that they are now God's nominees. They are selected individuals from God. They are His envoys. And now God wants to convey the truth without any adulteration. And this is what happens actually. So within the lifetime of a Rasul, this truth is conveyed without any confusion, without any diversion. And people then are left with no excuse but stubbornness to deny it. And this in the terms of the Quran is also called Itmamul Hujjah, which means conclusive communication of the truth. So if you look at this prophetic era, which extends from Adam to Muhammad, you'll see that various messengers which came in this era and their life stories and their sagas and their accounts have been preserved not only in the Quran but also in the Torah and in the Injil, the Gospels as well. And they all have this common feature, and that is that a Rasul or a messenger, he creates this miniature day of judgment. And people who adhere to these basic requirements of faith, only they are the ones who are salvaged. Only they are the ones who succeed. And this success means that they are rewarded in this world. They will be continued to rewarded in the land of Barzakh when they will be put to sleep, especially the ones who are martyrs among them. And finally, on the day of judgment, they will also be rewarded. So this is how the whole exercise will take place. Now, let us look at some of these requirements in a little more detail. The first of them is amanu, which means they profess faith. And this profession of faith, dear viewers, is actually signifying the fact that without demanding to see what they would like to profess faith in, they profess faith on the basis of arguments, on the basis of reasoning. So they will believe in God, they will believe in the hereafter, not because they have seen them or they could feel them or they can touch them, but because in favor of these two, for example, two basic beliefs, there are irrefutable arguments which support them. The existence of God is something which is not meant to be imposed on human beings as something that they just need to believe without questioning. Similar is the case with the hereafter. So their faith is not blind faith. It is basically faith which is cemented, which is punctuated with sound reasoning. And this is what makes them have that living connection with God and with all the tenets of faith. So when it becomes a self-discovered reality that they are going to be answerable on the day of judgment, because this is what their own conscience tells us, this is how the structure of the universe tells us. And similarly, the way this universe is made, and a number of other things which come across us, they show that this universe has a creator, and we have to believe in that creator. We have his being somehow, the feeling of his being found right in our own intuition. So anyone who denies his or her intuition is like denying the midday sun. So Amanu here means that they are people who profess faith in these tenets, who profess faith without being demanding to see them. This is like more like believing that wherever there is smoke, there's bound to be fire. So when there is smoke, they don't. I mean, people don't go and see and testify or and readily corroborate whether fire is there or not, because the smoke, wherever it comes from, it tells you that there is fire. Similarly, the traits of this universe and the way it has been created and the way the Quran has dealt with it and the way the Quran has expounded it, it shows that without seeing the day of judgment and without seeing God, we believe in both of these entities because found in their favor are irrefutable, undeniable proofs and reasoning. The second thing which is mentioned here is Allazina amanu wa amilu salihat. Amilu salihat literally means righteous deeds. So they are the ones who do righteous deeds. And these righteous deeds, of course, encompass both those deeds which are done as a result of their cognizance, which is found in our human nature. So as people, we know what right and wrong are. So not only these are counted amongst righteous deeds, but also one step ahead, deeds which are counted by religion as righteous, they also profess those. So these include worship rituals, of course, and these include all those dealings that we do with our fellow brethren. So Amilus Salihat encompasses our good deeds, our deeds which we relate to God in the form of worship rituals, and deeds also which we do with our fellow brethren. And this also is a very important reminder, dear viewers, of the fact that believers, or these permanent requirements of faith as we can see them, they are not meant as instruments in which you are going to go in one direction and neglect the other direction. No, they are meant to take you in a balanced way in both directions. So in the vertical direction, you have your relationship with God. In the horizontal direction, you have that relationship with your fellow brethren. So it's like having that vertical and horizontal relationship in a way that you are a balanced individual. You are not tilted towards one of these segments. And this is what righteous deeds are. Now, the third thing is also mentioned, and this third thing, in fact, is also a righteous deed, but because of its importance, because of its significance, it is mentioned as an independent entity, and that is tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bil sabr, which means that they urge one another to the truth and they urge one another to remain steadfast on the truth. So this is one thing which we have to understand, that people who believe in themselves, people who believe in God, people who believe in the hereafter, they do righteous deeds. One thing that they also do is that the truth that they discover, they would like to share the truth or that truth with other people as well, because it's like a treasure that they have come across. And because they are well wishers of their own brethren, they would like to share this treasure with all the people around them. And that is why it is said that these are people who are going to always urge one another to what right is. They would like people to understand the truth. They would like people to analyze the truth, to abide by the truth, to follow their conscience's disregard. And not only that, but at the same time, they will know that when they will tread the path of truth, there will be a lot of consternation, there will be a lot of adversity, a lot of hardships. And so therefore they need to be steadfast on this as well. So their exhortation is of both sorts. They would urge people to adopt the truth, and once they would try to do this, of course, as I said, they will be faced with a lot of adversity and hardship. So therefore the next thing that they will say is that you don't only adopt the truth, but remain steadfast on it, because this is how life is, and this is what life is all about. The Quran, at another instance, has said that our success in the hereafter is dependent on this single trait of patience, in which you remain steadfast on the truth. You do not waver in your stance, even if you have to face the strongest of currents. So the Quran has said, وَجَزَاهُمْ بِمَا صَبَرُوا جَنَّةً وَحَرِيرًا, that these are the people whose reward in the hereafter is paradise because of the patience and steadfastness that they showed in this world. Jazahum bima sabaru. So the word sabr in the Arabic language is not just the correct translation is not just patience. It is basically to remain steadfast, to persevere, to look the challenge, look the problem in the eye, and to challenge it and to face it in a way that you are able to discharge your duty in a befitting way. Now let us come to the next segment of our study circle, and in this segment we study a hadith of the Prophet. So this hadith, viewers, is from the Al-Jami al-Sahih of Imam Muslim, and it is reported by Jarir, and it says, "An Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam قال من يحرم الرفق يحرم الخير." Jarir reported that the Prophet said, "He who is devoid of gentleness is in fact devoid of goodness." What a beautiful advice which the Prophet has given us. It tells us that believers are not harsh. They are not people who walk or talk or conduct themselves in a way that people just vanish from their presence because of their harshness. On the other hand, they are very gentle. They speak in a gentle way. Even if they have to face adversity, even if they have to face persecution, their own style does not cross this. And the narrative actually says that a person who is not gentle, who does not have this softness in him or her, he has lost a lot of good. It would mean that he has lost a lot of treasure that he could have gained from God, and as a result imparted it and dispensed it with people to people around him. So to be soft, to be kind, to always look at the positive side of things, to always regard people with respect, to think about them that if harshness is something which is going to basically satisfy our own ego, it's not going to sit well with our adversary. So we are harsh at times in imposing our decision on our subordinates, on our children, on people who are answerable to us. And we seldom realize that we have another authority to which we are answerable, to whom we are answerable, and that is God Almighty. He can be very harsh. He can be very stern in retribution. Wallahu shadidul iqab are the Quranic words. But He is also very gentle. But people who are not, who are devoid of this gentleness, who are devoid of this softness, they have to understand that they must try to come back to humanity in a way that if they have to deal with people, if they have to be amongst people, then if they lose this side of their personality, they are not going to be in a position of leadership, especially. They'll never be looked up to. And this is a trait regarding which the Prophet has actually given the example of Prophet Muhammad. The Quran has given the example of Prophet Muhammad. It has said that had the Prophet been harsh, لَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Had you been harsh or hard-hearted, the people around you would have just vanished. They would not have stayed around you, because it's your gentleness, it's your grace, and your magnanimity, and your element of forgiving other people, which makes them surround you. So this gentleness is something which is the hallmark of good leaders. It is the hallmark of community leaders. It is the hallmark of people who are at the helm of affairs. And not only that, you see, each one of us, in some form or the other, we are at the helm of affairs. We could have a very small community. We could be a father, we could be a mother, we could be a office superintendent, we could have a certain other responsibility. But the fact is that many a time there are people who are answerable to us. So in all such situations, you are looked up to. And if you are in a position of authority, then that is the most worrisome thing that you can ever be of, because you see, if you are in a position of authority, then it's like being on a knife edge, because not only have you to behave yourself in a way that you are able to conduct yourself, on the other hand, more than that, you have to inspire people through your own person, and that can only be possible, dear viewers, if that gentleness is with us. And with this gentleness, with this softness, comes a lot of things. It makes you a person who is endeared to other people. It makes you a person who is liked by other people. It makes you a person who can always come closer to people because of that soft touch. Softness is something which is as soft as a mother's touch. just as a mother's touch for the baby is so soothing and comfortable for that baby. In a very similar way, people who are soft, people who are soothing in their ways, they are the ones who win the hearts of people. And remember, it is one of the targets that we should set before ourselves, that we should win the hearts of people. Prophet Abraham has very rightly said that, وَجْعَلْ لِي لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. Oh God, when I leave this world, make people remember me in very, very polite and nice terms. So this should be a desire that we all must have, that people remember us for what we did to them. And this can only be done if we were soft, humble, and kind-hearted. And this is the hallmark of the personalities of the prophets of God, that they have this very, very soft side of their personality. We see the prophet dealing with the hypocrites in a way that at times these hypocrites would create a lot of nuisance. They would cast aspersions on the life of the prophet and on his character. They would character assassinate him. But again, here the prophet would relent. On many cases, he would forgive people. On many an occasion, he would even call his own companions, that if there are people who are treating them badly, and if they are also their financial keepers, then that should not keep them away if someone is behaving badly to them. It basically means that the soft side of your personality should always shine. It should not have that dull look if people behave with you wrongly. And so, therefore, this is a very, very beautiful advice. And I do think that we need a lot to learn from the prophet's personality and from the personalities of other prophets with whom softness was something of a hallmark. Viewers, now let us come to the third segment of our study circle. This is a Bible verse that we will study, and taken from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, verse number 4. It says, "It is in the writings, bread is not man's only need, but every word which comes out of the mouth of God." Again, a beautiful way to explain the realities of life. So it tells us that we don't just have this physical existence which is nourished by bread. We also have a spiritual existence. And the fodder of that spiritual existence is the Word of God. So listen once again. It says, bread is not man's only need, meaning that you just don't need bread only, because bread is going to satisfy your physical need, your bodily need. But every word which comes out of the mouth of God is also needed, which is what is implied here, which means that because of our spiritual existence, we also need the Word of God to sustain us. So just as bread sustains our body, the Word of God sustains our spiritual existence. And this is again a very, very effective way to tell us that you must not forget, or rather, we must not forget, that we have these two planes of existence, our physical existence and our spiritual existence. Both need to be nourished. What happens is that we are more after our physical needs, and they tend to engulf these spiritual needs. And how timely this excerpt is, because right ahead of us is the month of Ramadan. It's about to start in a couple of days. And the month of Ramadan exactly has the same objective, that it gives that nourishment to the soul. It regards that physical self with a little contemptuousness by telling that physical self that for some time, let's say 16 hours per day, you forget about those physical needs and let that spiritual existence come forward and quench its needs. So that spiritual need in that 1 month of Ramadan is given more fodder. It's given more importance. It is made to shine. It is made to rise high. And this is what Jesus has said here, that we need that spiritual sustenance. And that spiritual sustenance, as he has very nicely put it, it comes from the mouth of God, which means divine scriptures, which means the words of the divine, which means what God has told us. And that is precisely why, dear viewers, it is the month of Ramadan in which fasting has been made mandatory, because it was in this month that the Qur'an began its revelation. And it is a befitting gratitude that we owe to God by fasting. We thank Him by saying that, well, we will fast and we will follow your directives, because it was in this month that you gave us this beautiful gift of the Quran. So Jesus here is, of course, making this point in a very effective way, that don't forget that you have that spiritual existence. You need that fodder from God. If you fail to realize this, then you may become a strong individual in the physical sense, but your soul will become decrepit, dilapidated. It will die away. It will finish. And the death of a soul, you know what that means? It means that the distinction between good and evil becomes blurred. We forget about that distinction. We fall into sin readily. We are not able to control ourselves. This is what we know, or this is what we call that weakness of the soul, or the weakness of our spiritual existence. So, to be morally strong, our spiritual existence must be strong. Spiritually, we have to go through a workshop. So, just as we have a gym for our physical fitness, we need a spiritual workshop for our spiritual fitness. And this spiritual fitness, as I just said, it's just a matter of coincidence that the month of Ramadan is beginning in a few days, and there is no better spiritual gym, I would say, than the month of Ramadan. It's like a gym that you go. It's like a routine that you follow in those on those 30 days. And the reason that you do that is that you become fitter in your soul later on. So the purpose of the month of Ramadan, clearly we can see from here, is that we should be more vigilant in our daily routine, in our personal development in the 11 months that follow that. It's not just an end in itself. It's a workshop whose actual practical manifestation will come to light the way we fare in the next 11 months. And hence this beautiful reminder by Prophet Jesus that don't forget, the sustenance of your soul is also something which is very important. So we now come to the fourth and last segment before we open this mic for our question and answer session, and that is that we will have a discussion, a moderated discussion, and the topic today is how can we become responsible in life. So just to give you a small introduction to this topic, so you see, as human beings, responsibility is something which is such an important trait that every person should have, that without responsibility, without being people who have a sense of responsibility, we will never be trusted individuals. We will never be entrusted with high tasks. We will never achieve in life. We will never be able to make a difference in our lives. So one of the most important traits that every single person must have, and in fact we do have, it's just a question of polishing it, it's a question of nourishing it, it's a question of making it more stronger than before, is that we make ourselves responsible, not only ourselves responsible, but the next in kin, which is our generation, the next generation. We have to impart this sense of responsibility to them as well. For a person who is not responsible towards his duties, towards his fellow beings, he will never be responsible for before the Almighty. So please put your views together, think deep, and share your vision and give us new ideas how we can become more responsible. Over to you, Mariam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I will start off by giving out my 2 cents. I think a huge part of what made me responsible is how my parents had, the credit goes to them, because when I was the first child and my brothers after me, my mom would tell me like, hey, grab the diaper, bring this for your brother, that kind of stuff. So starting this kind of training early on where it's like, oh, take this water to your grandfather. So in terms of like, it seemed like you're caring for them, but at the same time, I became more responsible. And as I kept on growing up, the responsibilities and sort of house chores or caring for others increased until now I live with my brothers because we're out studying. And so we already have allotted different allotted different responsibilities for each other. So starting young helped me to reach this position. And then because you have to get certain work done around the house or even outside. So that has helped us sort of figure out who's going to do what, just because life throws that work at you. So I would give my parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a very nice way to inculcate responsibility, that you assign chores to your younger people, to your children maybe, so that Once those chores are, you're made responsible of those chores, of course, you'll be held accountable. And it could be as minor as maybe shutting off the lights of a room or closing the door at night or going to the market for grocery. So these are all small tasks and chores which every parent does. And if he delegates, or if they delegate these tasks to their children, then they also learn to become responsible. So I think it's a very beautiful way to learn responsibility.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Rohan, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So the way I have become more responsible is that I recently got married, and now I know whatever I do will have an effect not only on myself but on my partner as well. So I recently started focusing more on my job because I know, I became more responsible at work because I know I have to earn for not only for myself but also for my partner. Similarly, I started taking more control of my emotions because I know that now it's going to affect my partner as well. And I also started taking care of my health as well. I became more responsible in that aspect so that my illnesses never become a burden on my partner. So that's something that helped me.
Right.
Also, my partner is like an accountability partner as well. So whenever I do something wrong, she helps me in realizing it later. So, in other words, marriage helped me a lot.
That is another very, very unique aspect that you have shared, Rohan, that marriage makes a person responsible because now he's no longer a bachelor. He's no longer responsible for his own self. He has a family to look after. So when you are entrusted with a responsibility or with a certain task, you are more rational. You are more caring. You to understand that you're not living alone. You cannot be rash in your decisions. You have to be very, very cogent and very rational in your decisions.
Thank you. Baran Ashur, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I think for me personally, the best way to feel responsible is by prioritizing what's really important in life, and especially in the sense of religion. Like if I know if I do this well, then God will be happy with me. So that gives me like a sense of motivation to carry out my responsibilities that I have to carry out in life. So as, for example, being good to my parents, or staying kind, or praying my daily prayers, stuff like that. Like if I don't feel like it, I just remind myself of, well, God will be happy with me, and especially in the hereafter, that I will probably get God's grace for it.
Correct. So basically what you're saying is that your relationship with your religion has made you more responsible.
Yes, exactly.
The way you discharge your duties, you pray, you have to do a certain amount of charity work. Of course, you have to fast when the month arrives. So these rituals make you more responsible, and they have a reflection on the other affairs of your life as well. Because you see, this is how God is making you responsible for certain things, and this makes a habit develop in us to honor the commitments that we have made.
Thank you very much. Shaban Ansari, you're up next.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम।
मेरी भी तकरीबन वही बात थी जो अभी एक भाई ने की कि जन्नत का शहरी बनने के लिए तो फिर रिस्पॉन्सिबल होना पड़ेगा दुनिया में, क्योंकि यहीं पर से हम रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी को सही अदा करेंगे हुकूक और फराइज की सूरत में। मतलब फराइज को अपने ज्यादा रिस्पॉन्सिबल होकर अदा करेंगे तो तभी फिर हमें जन्नत मिलेगी। तो लिहाजा पूरा वो सारा जो सिस्टम है, मतलब हमारा एक तज़किये का या वो हमें रिस्पॉन्सिबल ही बनाता है। और आमतौर पर यही होता है कि इंसान मैच्योर होता है तो रिस्पॉन्सिबल हो जाता है, लेकिन अगर इस सेंस में हो तो और भी ज्यादा हो जाता है। और जो मरियम वाली बात के बच्चों को शुरू से छोटे छोटे टास्क देने चाहिए, तो ये भी बिल्कुल ठीक बात है कि छोटे छोटे टास्क बच्चों को दें तो वो रिस्पॉन्सिबल होते हैं। और उसमें खाली यही नहीं बल्कि सड़क पे कूड़ा फेंकने से लेकर सिग्नल तोड़ने पर, मतलब बच्चे जब टीन एज में होते हैं तो उनको ये सिखाया जाए कि आप ही हैं। वो ये कहते हैं कि एक हमारे करने से क्या होगा, तो उनको ये सिखाया जाए कि एक आपके ही करने से सब कुछ होगा। इसी तरह होगा तो फिर ये चीज जो है वो फिर एक रिस्पॉन्सिबल शहरी भी बनेंगे। तो मेरा ये ख्याल है।
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Rafia Khwaja, you're up next. Please go ahead.
The way I think I'm responsible is that I try to show by doing good deeds, charities, and my behavior in the house or outside. I feel that my if I show that I'm responsible and I behave in a good way, I think it does affect my children. Whether I show my responsibilities, showing going and praying, and without getting after them that you please also pray. So I just think that my showing it by my actions makes me a responsible person, and I think it affects the others also.
Right. So, like, it's like leading by example, that you show that responsibility, and you actually, when you show that, people are going to be inspired by you.
Yes, that's what I think.
Thank you. Shabnam, please go ahead.
जी सर, मेरा बहुत ब्रीफ सा कमेंट है। सर, मुझे लगता है कि मैंने हमेशा लाइफ में अपने डिसीजंस को ओन करना सीखा है। बहुत दफ़ा इंस्टेंसेस हुए जबकि लोगों के मशवरे या बल्कि पुश करना भी जो मेरे लिए सही नहीं रहा या गड़बड़ हुआ, लेकिन मैंने हमेशा अपने डिसीजंस को ओन किया है कि फाइनल डिसीजन तो मेरा ही था। तो मैंने अपने आप को रिस्पॉन्सिबल हेल्ड किया है और उससे फिर बहुत बेहतरी मुझे अपने उसमें बेहतर नजर आई। बस अब मैं
Right.
यही
So
कहना
basically, it is taking responsibilities of our mistakes, which makes us realize at the same time, it makes other people realize that taking responsibility of your mistakes is a means to become a better person. Because unless you take responsibility of what you wrongly did, you just cannot improve upon them. You cannot improve yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all of the participants.
Let me give you an interesting, I would say, slant or a tangent to this. I learned this from my teacher many years ago, maybe 4 decades ago. So he would do one thing. He said that if you would like to reform naughty students who are naughty, and they are people who cause a lot of fear in the class, they cause a lot of disruption. So he would tell us that whenever you are faced in your teaching with naughty students, one thing to make them naughty less or lose that naughtiness is to appoint them as class monitors or give them some important responsibility. And you'll find that this disruptive student, who's the prankster, he is going to become a very responsible individual once you know that he is being entrusted with a task ahead. So I did this in my teaching years as well, and I found it to be a very handy thing as well. That if you find people or a class full of students who are really rowdy, then select the rowdiest of them and make him in charge of the class, and that will have an effect on the rest of the people as well. I cannot say for all, but it has worked a lot of times. So again, you see, the importance is here of responsibility. So formerly, that prankster was doing whatever he wanted. As soon as he was given that position of responsibility, he realized that I need to now behave. I must do my due. So at times, giving responsibility to people also transforms their lives. Another thing that I did learn from some Japanese people, through their writings, of course, and some other ways as well, was that one way to create that responsibility or build responsibility amongst younger people is to give them a seed and tell them that you are going to look after the seed, because this is a plant which is going to develop in 15 days or 20 days, and you have to water the plant, you have to put manure in it, you have to be careful about the sunlight and the shade, the time that it has to spend there, and you have to look after it as if you look after a baby. And this is a thing which has worked wonders with the younger lot, because you see, now they are made responsible of something that they know, and the seed that they would generally give would be the one that would sprout soon, so that the whole process would not go beyond a month or so, in which that sapling would come out and there would be a bud and then a flower and something like that. So the whole process would be very short, and a child would witness this, that he is tending to that plant, and the more he is tending to that plant, the more blossoming that plant becomes, and the more careless he is, the more badly shaped that plant would be. So one thing is, this is something which is also very beneficial. Another thing that they would tell their children to make them responsible is to keep pets. So you see, to keep a pet would mean that you have to look after a living being. You'll have to look after the needs of a living being. The pet, of course, could be a dog, could be a cat, could be any other animal. It needs to be attended to. You have to give food to it, water. Of course, you have to take it for walks as well, to attend to the vaccination as well, the health as well. So you see, now you are consigning a living being into to a human being. So that is also something which works. And these are very novel ways which I did learn. I did learn from these Japanese writings, and I think this is something that I wanted to share as well. That if you have to make your children responsible, give them something in which the result of their endeavor, of their responsibility, is going to come very soon before them. As I gave you this example of a plant. And if you are dealing with a rowdy child or a rowdy youngster or anything that you are not even being able to control, give that child or that person some responsibility.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Saleem. All participants for their excellent tips and thoughts, and Dr. Saleem for the excellent tips for like what you could actually do to see the results. And so I think this will be the end of our discussion segment here. We'll move on to the Q&A, and we have a couple of questions in the chat to start off. For participants with questions, raise your hand if you'd like to ask your question, or you can post it in the chat. Our first question asks, so this is a bit of a long question. It has a few parts. So I'm going to go part by part. The first part is, you said that it is known that when we break a promise or an oath made to people or God, we have to feed 10 people. Now, if you don't remember how many oaths you've broken, how or you know that it's a lot, but you just don't know the number, can you just keep on feeding people constantly in order to make up for it? So this is the first part.
Okay, let me first answer this. I mean, instead of worrying more about the number of people that you're going to feed, I think it would be better if you worry about that you don't break the oath in the first place and try to honor it as much as you can. So, I mean, this is something that we have to understand, that as far as the Quran is concerned, it has prescribed, of course, that if you have to atone for an oath, then you can either feed 10 people or you can clothe then 10 people. And also, I'm just looking up online of the Quranic verse which has said there is another option as well. Just give me a second. I'm just going to read that verse from you. It is in Surah Anam. So the third option is to free a slave. And because slavery is no longer found, so one thing that can be done in lieu of that is that you pay some penalty, you pay some money to liberate a prisoner maybe, or you pay money to get people out of jail by paying their bail money. At times there are people who are left in the jail, they don't have money for their bails, they don't have money for that particular thing. So this is one thing that can be done as well. So it's like a monetary penalty that you can impose on yourself. So there are three things basically. You either clothe 10 people, or you feed 10 people, or as the Quran says, you set one slave free. But this was, of course, for the times of the Quran when slavery was there. But in the absence of slavery, and by analogy, you can spend this money, as I said, to liberate a prisoner if he is, he is worthy of it and he doesn't have the money to do so. So this is another way to do so. But as I said, I mean, if you keep on violating an oath, then you must concentrate more on your own self. That why is it that this is happening again and again? I mean, yes, of course, you have to atone for that, whether you feed or whether you clothe the poor or whether you pay. But then more effort should be put into analyzing that why is it that I'm doing this thing again and again. I mean, this is like a personality trait that has become prominent in me. So, and of course, unless you do that, you have to keep on expiating or doing that atonement. But as I said, a better way out would be to keep a track of why is this happening and how can I come to grips with it.
So is there a difference between the promise and oath? And if you don't remember the numbers, do you just continuously for the rest of your life until you think
it's like, of course, there is no difference between a promise and an oath, because it's the same thing. You are giving your word for something. So a promise is like giving a word. And if you've promised someone that you're going to do it and you break that promise, I mean, there are promises which people make with other people. For that, break. I mean, if you break that promise, I mean that is between you and that person. But if you promise yourself something that I'm going to do this and you don't do it, so that becomes like an oath. So I mean, you have to make this difference. When you promise with someone else, then that is, I mean, not liable for this atonement. That is something in which that person will decide how he would atone, how he would like it to be atoned. But this is something that you do it on your own. You swear that, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but you end up not doing it. So whether it's a promise or a oath that you have taken, it's very close. I mean, it's almost equivalent.
And so when it comes to feeding or clothing 10 people, should it be different people each time, or can you feed one person or clothe them
Again,
10?
see, the Quran is silent here, and obviously it wants people, I mean, 10 different people, so that they could be, so that the benefit of your charitable act, or which is actually an atonement, should reach a wider range of people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question asks, this is in response to your lecture on spending in charity. You said that the parents get some reward for the good deeds that their kids do as sadaqah jariyah. But if the parents get rewards for their good deeds, for their children's good deeds, do they also get penalty for their bad deeds? So,
Oh, yes, of course.
okay.
If they are responsible for those bad deeds, for example, if they are responsible, I mean, not only if they are parents, but it could be anyone else. For example, you go back in history right up to the inception of individuals when Cain killed Abel. So this is the first act of murder that took place. So all acts of murder which are inspired by this act will accrue in the account of Cain, and he will be punished not only for murdering Abel, but of course for, I mean, starting this tradition as well. So it goes on in both ways, whether you do it positively or negatively. Everything that you do, the effect is either going to be right in front of you during your own lifetime, or it will continue to take shape once you pass away. In both cases, whether it's a positive impact that you do or a negative, it's going to have an effect on your own account. So if it's a positive, you'll be rewarded. And if it's a negative, you'll be punished for that.
Could you provide any references from the Qur'an or Hadith for that?
I mean, these are common sense things. You see, you are the originator of a sin. You see, it's like being guilty of a sin. When I am inspiring people to do a bad thing, you don't need to have a reference from the Quran. It's just like saying that you are the person who is responsible for something. So I'm responsible for what I'm doing, and I'm also responsible for what I am inspiring in the lives of other people, because now I am becoming the source of that evil. What proof does that require?
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Muhammad Qasim, you're up next. Please go ahead. Muhammad Qasim, you're up next. Please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर,
Walaikum
मेरा
assalam.
सवाल ये फीमेल के लिए एक जो कुरान में अलग से हिदायत है कि अपनी छुपी हुई ज़ीनत को ज़ाहिर ना करो गैर महरम के सामने, उसके मुतालिक है। कोई भी ज़ीनत के बारे में अगर हम दिमाग में सोच रहे हैं तो बस कुछ वो ज़ीनत, एक तो हम लोग कपड़ा गर्ल्स जो है कपड़ा पहनती हैं, उसके बाद फिर चेहरे में ज़ीनत करती हैं, या तो हाथ में करती हैं या तो पैर में करती हैं, और ये आम तौर पर ज़ाहिर ही होती है। ठीक है, कपड़ा भी सबको दिखता है, चेहरे की ज़ीनत भी दिखती है, हाथ की भी दिखती है, पैर की भी दिखती है। तो ये छुपी हुई ज़ीनत से क्या मुराद है? स्पेसिफिकली समझ में नहीं आ रहा है। और जी सर।
जी, प्लीज कंटिन्यू।
हाँ, और सर कोई भी मतलब कोई छुपी हुई ज़ीनत दिमाग में लिस्ट आउट ऐसी नहीं हो रही है जो कि गैर महरम से छुपाना ज़रूरी है, लेकिन अगर घर के बाप, भाई, मामा, चाचा के सामने दिखे तो कोई हर्ज नहीं है, तो उसको काइंडली लिस्ट आउट कर दिए तो समझने में आसान हो।
आपका जवाब मैं उर्दू में दे देता हूँ। देखिए, कुरान के जो अल्फाज हैं, ला युब्दीना ज़ीनतहुन्ना इल्ला मा ज़हरा मिन्हा, इसमें छुपी हुई ज़ीनत का जिक्र ही कहीं नहीं। अल्फाज हैं कि वो अपनी ज़ीनतों को जाहिर ना करें सवाए इसके कि जो आपसे आप जाहिर हैं। इसमें छुपी हुई का तो कहीं भी तज़किरा नहीं है। ये आपने कहाँ पढ़ लिया?
अच्छा, तो मतलब वो कौन सी ज़ीनत को छुपाने के बारे में, जाहिर ना करने के बारे में?
वो ज़ीनतें जो आपसे आप जाहिर हैं, उनको उनके बारे में उनको रियायत दी गई है कि उनको वो जाहिर कर सकती हैं। यानी हमें उनको जो ज़ीनतें जाहिर हैं, यानी वो कौन सी, उनको आपने गिनवा दिया है। हाथ, पाँव और चेहरे में अगर आपने कोई ज़ीनत की हुई है या कपड़ा जो आपने पहना हुआ है, तो ये आपसे आप जाहिर है। इसको खुदावंद ताला ने कहा है कि इसके अलावा अगर आपने कहीं जीनत की हुई है तो उसको ढांपें। ये जो आपसे आप जाहिर हो जाती है, इनको ढांपने की जरूरत नहीं है।
जी, तो यही तो सवाल है कि इसके अलावा जो ज़ीनत की हुई है उसको ढाँप ले,
मसलन
सिवाय
देखिए
अपने महरम के
आप गले में कोई
ऊपर।
चीज पहनते हैं, ख्वातीन गले में कुछ पहनती हैं, तो उनको गले को ढांपने के लिए फिर उनको कुछ छुपाना चाहिए। सर पे वो जीनत करती हैं, तो सर पे अगर वो कोई चीज जीनत की पहनेंगी तो सर को ढांकना चाहिए। ये दो एग्जाम्पल्स तो बहुत नुमाया है।
हमने ये क्वेश्चन आस्क गामदी ऐप में भी पूछा था, तो शहजाद सलीम सॉरी डॉक्टर इरफान शहजाद शायद हाँ, उन्होंने कहा कि ये गले की ज़ीनत वो गिरेबान में नहीं आता है, तो वो आपसे आप ज़ाहिर हो जाती है, तो उसको छुपाना ज़रूरी नहीं है। और बाज़ कल्चर में सर भी ज़ाहिर रहता है, तो सर में भी अगर कोई ज़ीनत हो रही है, तो उसको भी छुपाना ज़रूरी नहीं है।
नहीं, ये तो देखें, ये जवाब तो आप उनसे पूछें, मैं तो आपको अपना जवाब दे सकता हूँ। उन्होंने क्या इस्तेदलाल किया तो मेरे सामने नहीं है, आप उनसे पूछ सकते हैं। लेकिन जीनतों को छुपाने का मतलब आप उसूलन समझ लेना। कुरान ये कहता है कि वो आज़ा जो आपसे आप जाहिर होते हैं, आपसे आप, उन पर अगर आपने जीनत की हुई है तो उनको छुपाने की जरूरत नहीं है। अब इसमें इख्तलाफ हो सकता है कि सर जो है वो आपसे आप होता है कि नहीं होता, गिरेबान आपसे आप होता है या नहीं होता। इख्तलाफ तो असल में इतलाक में है। उसूल ये है कि आपसे आप जिन चीजों को, आपसे आप का क्या मतलब है कि जिनको छुपाने के लिए कोई वजह होनी चाहिए। यानी आप देखिए कि हम चेहरे को छुपाते हैं तो कोई वजह होती है, वरना चेहरा खुला रहता है। हाथ छुपाते हैं तो कोई वजह होती है, जबकि सर ऐसा नहीं है। सर आप मजहबी तौर पर भी छुपा लेते हैं। सर जो है वो बहुत सारे जो कल्चर्स के अंदर वो टोपियां वो वैसे ही पहन लेते हैं। तो इस वजह से सर के बारे में मुझे तो ये बात दुरुस्त नहीं लगती है। इसलिए मैं तो हमेशा ये कहता हूँ कि सर जो है उसमें अगर आपने कोई जीनत की हुई है तो उसको तो छुपाया जाएगा। इसी तरह से गरेबान जो है, उसमें तो कुरान ने ये कह दिया है कि वलयज़रिबना बिखुमुरिहिन्ना अला जुयूबिहिन्ना, जुयूब कहते ही गले को और सीने को है, कि उनको ये चाहिए कि वो अपनी जो जीनतें हैं जो छुपी हुई हैं उनको ढांपें, और उसके लिए अपने ओढ़नी का जो बुक्कल है वो अपने चेहरे पर, अपने सीने पर बांध लें, ताकि वो जो गरेबान की जीनत है वो नजर ना आए।
अच्छा, यही कंफ्यूजन है कि ये जो हुक्म है, तो ये तो महरम के लिए भी होगा ना? अगर मेरे मामा है, चाचा है, ठीक है, तो
नहीं,
उनके
उनके लिए
सामने
क्यों
भी
होगा?
तो
नहीं, उनके लिए तो नहीं होगा। ये है ही
अच्छा।
महरम लोगों के लिए।
Thank you. Baran Ashur, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Sir, my question is about the concept of like people who have not been practicing for their entire lives and started practicing maybe late in their adult lives, even though they had to practice since puberty. People say they have to make up for all the missed prayers, missed fasts, missed Ramadans, missed zakats, stuff like that. But it's very hard to keep track of that, because especially
Right.
if you have no idea how much money you made or how much prayers you missed. What's the best way to make up, or is it even necessary?
So first of all, there is no explicit guidance which is found in the Quran or any of the sayings of the Prophet, which tells us that you have to make up for what you have lost in your life. It is basically a personal feeling that accounts for it. So my understanding here is that if the things that that you have missed in life, I mean, if the number is huge, something which is beyond you, I think the only thing that can be done is to repent and start over again. But if there is something which is manageable, I mean, like a couple of years of worship rituals that you were not able to offer, then maybe someone can think that, well, I can cover them. So it's basically a self decision. But in general, I would say that if you are a person who, or any person who has lived a life in oblivion, or who was careless or indifferent in any way, and now he or she suddenly realizes, then maybe I think God is going to be merciful on that person, and he can start afresh.
Okay, and does that also mean that, for example, if you are still, maybe you converted 1 year ago and you're still learning about the religion, you're not praying immediately all 5 of your prayers, but you know you should do it, but you have not built up the discipline yet or the iman yet to be able to maintain that.
I think this is like developing a habit of praying. You start off with a fun prayer, and then slowly you build up. And if that takes a year or two, I think it should be fine. And hopefully, if you do good deeds for the rest of your life, they shall stand compensated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. We have a bunch of chat questions. The first one asks, in Surah Anfal, Ayah 3, الذين يقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. Is ينفقون limited to just charity or monetary help, or does that also encapsulate a broader concept of using whatever money or skill or talent that you might have to help others, like teach them or show them the skill? So, for example, if you are educated, make an effort to teach someone who doesn't have education. Would that also count as ينفقون?
So, in this particular verse of Surah Anfal, it refers to charity, which actually refers to spend in charity whatever you have. So it is more geared towards whatever wealth that you have. But as a corollary to that, for example, if you don't have health, and if you can substitute it through other means, like for example some skill that you have, I would still think that it amounts to charity as well. So it's like a charitable behavior. It is just a vehicle of charity has changed from wealth to skill.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, what are the things that I have to give zakat on, and what are the rules of zakat? If you could guide towards an article, that would be great.
So I think I've given a detailed talk on this. Mariam, you can maybe find it and post it in the chat. It's
Okay.
called the concept of zakat or something like that, and it has all the details.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, there is a verse in Surah An'am which says, and every soul earns not blame except against itself, and no bearer of burden will bear the burden of another. So how will a person be held responsible for another person's sin? For example, how will Cain be held accountable for another for other murders until Qiyamah?
Because he was a source of inspiration for them. He made them do these things. I mean, he was adding fire to their fury. So basically, it is not that was done in isolation. It was done in a way that it fueled a lot of fury in the minds of other people. So it would be like an added thing. It's not a basic, I would say, punishment that they would get. It would be something of an additional thing, that their act of sin or their act of murder was such a thing that it inspired so many other people. They looked upon it to be something that they could follow as well and emulate as an example. So why shouldn't it be done so? It's not that what you're doing is done by some person else. You see, one part of that act or that deed is contagious. It's transitive. It is being transferred to the next person. So the killing itself is something for which that person will be rewarded. But the act of killing, in as much as it provided inspiration and that motivation and that push to do this evil act, will have that portion as well added to it. So it's not that complete, thing that would be added to the account, but the part in which he got that inspiration from him, if ever he did.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Baran Nashur, please go ahead.
Sir, I want to add to that question in a way, like if you teach someone something or you had like good intentions, but the effect turned out to be bad, like that person started sinning or deviating from the right path, even though that was not your intention. Will you still be held accountable for that?
I mean, if you were responsible in any way for that, but if you were not responsible, if the person himself, out of his own will, without any input from you, did that bad thing, then you'll not be responsible. Your responsibility will only be when you are teaching someone something bad, actively teaching.
Okay, but if I may give an example, for example, I just asked about if somebody just converted. So I have like a friend that is like a convert, and he has a problem with praying regularly. And if I tell him, well, just keep it slow and just build upon it, like one prayer at a time, and that person takes that advice I gave him with the good intention, like just take it slow and steady, and he transfers it to, okay, then I just stay on one prayer for my entire life.
No, that's not. You see, what you were doing is you were not saying that you stay on one prayer your entire life. Your original advice was that you take it easy. You add one prayer slowly to the next, and so on and so forth. So your original advice was never the same I mean, you never said that you stay on one prayer. You gave him a complete package to follow, and you just enumerate the steps that please go stepwise. So I think if you tell the person the whole story and the whole picture, and tell him that this is the target that you have to meet or reach, but you do it slowly and stepwise, and that is very clear. I mean, if this happens, that you're not responsible because you never said that there's just one prayer. All that you said was that to achieve 5 prayers, go gradually.
Okay, I understand. And if I may ask another question about this topic, what if, like for example, in your younger years, you advise someone something bad, and that person has completely deviated from the right path, and you feel regret, and you want to show remorse or ask for forgiveness? How should you do that?
I didn't get you. When you guided someone, and then what happened?
Like if you push someone to a sin, to a certain sin,
Okay.
and that person
Mhm.
has completely deviated from the path because of that sin, and you feel bad and you want to show remorse or ask for atonement or help
Mhm.
that person, how should you do that?
I mean, the way, of course, is simple, that you try to make friends with that person and try to tell him that, well, I was the one who misled you, and I have realized that it was a bad thing, and I'd like to communicate my realization to you as well. So your job is done after that. If he
Okay.
doesn't realize, I mean, then it's up to him. All that you can do is you tell him that, well, I was the one responsible for your deviation, but now I realize that I was wrong. So I've come to you with this desire that I also tell you that this is not the right thing. So you've done your job. However, if the person doesn't listen, then it is his responsibility.
Okay, and if that person tells me you ruined my life because of that, then are
Well,
you
you see, if
responsible
the
for
person
ruining his
tells
life?
you, it all depends. You see, we are more talking hypothetically. Otherwise, if you have a pinpointed example, you see, there are several details that have to be known before I can give an exact answer. I mean, if someone says that you ruined my life, there could be a number of responses to that. For example, I mean, did you do it knowingly, deliberately, or did you do it out of ignorance? Did you realize at that time, or did you realize later on? Was it the person himself who realized, or is it that someone else made him realize, or some other event happened? So you see, there are so many contingencies that unless we know what exactly transpired in the complete sense, we cannot say anything for sure. But one thing that we can say for sure is that if you are responsible for something, then you should take responsibility for that and communicate to the person that I was wrong. I was not. I realized my mistake, and I would like to let you know as well that I was a bad influence on you, or maybe I inspired you in a bad way. So I think that is enough as far as your repentance and remorse is concerned.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. In terms of the question about Surah Al-An'am, there is a follow-up question that is asking about the context of the verse. Should I repeat the verse?
Yes, please.
It says, and every soul earns not blame except against itself, and no bearer of burdens will bear the burden of another. What's the context behind this?
Well, I would need to look it up. I'm not a. I have no, I mean, don't have it in mind. I would need to look it up.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saleem. Umar Saeed, you're up next. Please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब
Walaikum assalam.
डॉक्टर साहब अभी आप एक पर्दे के ऊपर क्वेश्चन हुआ था वो उन्होंने कहा था कि जीनत को छुपाना है तो जीनत का डिसाइड कौन करेगा पर्सन या माशरा
जीनत तो एक अरबी ज़बान का और उर्दू ज़बान का एक आम लफ्ज़ है। इसमें किसी को डिसाइड करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। जैसे मैं कोई लफ्ज़ बोलता हूँ तो उसका लफ्ज़ वाज़ेह है। जीनत का मतलब है कोई ऐसी चीज़ जिसके नतीजे में आप कोई चीज़ इज़ाफ़ा कर रहे हैं, ऐड कर रहे हैं अपनी ब्यूटिफ़िकेशन के लिए। मा यतज़य्यनु बिही जिसे कहते हैं ना कि कोई चीज़ आप एडिशनली ऐड करके एक है ना नेचुरल ब्यूटी हो सकती है या नेचुरल जो आपके पास अल्लाह ताला ने हुस्न दिया हुआ है, उसमें आप किसी चीज़ का पैबंद लगा रहे हैं। कोई मज़ीद चीज़ जैसे उसकी एक बड़ी नुमायाँ मिसाल ज्वेलरी है, ज़ेवरात हैं। ज़ेवरात सबसे नुमायाँ मिसाल हैं ज़ीनत की कि अब वो ज़ेवरात आपने एक एडिशनल ट्रिंकेट है जो आपने ऐड किया है। सो ज़ीनत हमेशा उस चीज़ को कहते हैं कि जो आप खारिज से इज़ाफ़ा करें आप किसी न किसी पहलू से।
वो तो डिफरेंट माशरे में डिफरेंट होगी ना अगर मैं यूएसए में रहता हूँ वो जीनत दूसरी होंगी
नहीं,
और
बिल्कुल भी नहीं। دیکھیں زینت کا تو مطلب ہی ہے کہ چیز کو ایڈ کرنا. اگر آپ اس کی آپ مثال لیجئے, اگر ہم زینتی کے لفظ کو لے لیں اور سر کی مثال لے لیجئے, بالوں کی مثال لے لیجئے, تو بال جب خواتین نے کنگھی کی ہو, صرف سادی سمپل کنگھی کی ہوئی ہے, لیٹ سے کوئی کلپ بھی لگا لیا ہے یا کوئی اس طرح کی چیز لگا لی ہے, تو اس میں زینت تو کوئی پہلو نہیں ہے. زینت کا تو مطلب ہے کہ آپ اس کو بیوٹیفائی کیا ہوا ہے. تو ورڈ بیوٹیفیکیشن جو ہے, جیسے ہم انگریزی میں استعمال کرتے ہیں, اور بالکل وہی ہے تزئین اردو میں. جو لفظ بیوٹیفائی انگریزی میں ہے وہی تزئین اردو میں ہے. تو بیوٹیفیکیشن کا جو پروسیس ہے یہ اصل چیز ہے. اور ہاں, اس میں یہ بھی ہو سکتا ہے کہ کوئی خاتون یہ کہہ سکتی ہے کہ بھئی یہ بیوٹیفیکیشن کی چیز کو آپ سمجھ رہے ہیں, میں اس کو نہیں سمجھتی. تو یہ چھوٹا موٹا اختلاف ہو سکتا ہے, اور اللہ میاں نے اس کو روا رکھا ہے. یعنی اللہ میاں نے تو آپ کو اصولی گائیڈ لائن دے دی ہے کہ آپ اپنی یہ جو تزئین کی جو چیزیں ہیں جس میں آپ کو چیز ایڈ کر رہی ہیں, اس سے آپ کو چاہیے کہ آپ پرہیز کریں, اور اگر آپ نے کی ہوئی ہے تو اس چیز کو ڈھانپ لیں پھر.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the questions today. Thanks to all the participants who came to participate in the discussion and also in the Q&A. And thank you, Dr. Saleem, for enlightening us with really amazing tips on responsibility and also answering our questions. Inshallah, see you tomorrow in another session. And until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you.